Lesson is over midpoint and distance formula actually, and I believe your paper only has the midpoint, so I am going to have you add some notes on the back. On the back is where we will do distance formula. So let's work on midpoint first. What I want you guys to do is actually pause this video and try this first, kind of as a warm-up. What you're going to do is just plot the points first. If you need a refresher, remember every point is in the format of x comma y. So the first value tells you where you're at on the x-axis and then where you're at on the y-axis. So -2, 5 is right here. 0, -4, 5, 3. Okay, and again, I want you to try this first. So the warm-up is to place a dot where you think the halfway point is. So if you've tried this and you have unpaused, here's where your midpoints are going to be. So let's do the midpoint of the first two first, -2, 5 and 0, -4. So that midpoint, if you guessed correctly or calculated this correctly, should be at -1 and then about a half, or -1, 0.5. Now here's how I know that, or here's how you could have figured that out without a formula. If you look at the vertical distance there between these 2 points, and you just kind of count that, those are 9 away. Okay, you have to go down 9 boxes to get to the other point. Well, half of 9 is 4.5. So if I'm going halfway, then I need to go down 4.5, and if you start up at the top and go down 4.5, then I'm right there at that 0.5 mark, and that's my y value. Now you can do that horizontally as well if you're going over to the right. It's going over 1, 2 boxes. I'll show you. It's going to the right 2 boxes. Well, if I'm going halfway, then I want to make sure I only go over 1. So if I only go over 1, and I'm right here, okay? So I went down 4.5, but over to the right 1. There's my midpoint. It should be at -1, 0.5. So if you kind of use that, your midpoint should be that, 2.5, and -0.5, which would be about right here. There's the midpoint of those 2 points. And then the third midpoint would be 1.5, 4, which is about right here. Oops, let's do red. So my midpoints are in red there so you can see them. So we kind of just used our own logic, and hopefully you guys were able to figure that out where the midpoints were. Now there's actually a midpoint formula. So if you, let's say, don't have a graph, you can actually calculate midpoint using this right here. Now basically what midpoint formula is it's an average. So somewhere along the line in your math career, you probably found a mean. If you find the mean of 2 numbers, you're finding the average or what's in between them. So you add those 2 numbers and then you divide by 2. Or if you have more than 2 numbers, you add the numbers together and then divide by however many numbers you have. So if I want to find what's in the middle of 2 coordinate points, let's say I have x1, y1 as my first point, and x2, y2, and I'm finding the middle. What you do is you take your 2 x values and you add them together, and you divide by 2, that finds the middle. And then you take your 2 y values, add them together, and divide by 2, and that tells you what's in the middle. So let's try that. So number 5, ignore the numbering. This is really number 1 for us. If I want to find the midpoint between 1, -2 and -3, 6, first we are going to take our 2 x values. I'm going to use yellow again, which are 1 and -3. And we're going to add those together. So 1 plus -3, or just 1 minus 3. And then divide by 2, that's going to tell us what's right in between those 2 numbers. So that'll give me my x. Then you do the same thing with the y's. I'm going to take -2 plus 6, and I'm going to divide those by 2. So 1 minus 3 is negative 2, divided by 2 is negative 1. Negative 2 plus 6 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. So my midpoint should be at negative 1, 2. And I want you to think about a number line for a second. If you think on a number line and think about your x values, you have 1 and negative 3. Negative 1 is going to fall right in between those. And then if you think about your y values, negative 2 and 6, 2 is going to fall right in between those on a number line. All right, so let's try this one. First, let's do the x values. Our x values are 6 and negative 10. So we need to find what number is in between 6 and negative 10. So add them together. I'm just going to do 6 minus 10 and divide by 2. Same thing with the y's. Well, this one should be easy. If you think about 3 and 4, what number is right in between 3 and 4? It's going to be 3.5. Well, let's use the formula. 3 plus 4 divided by 2. Okay, so 6 minus 10 is negative 4, divided by 2 is negative 2. 3 plus 4 is 7. If you divide that by 2, you get 3.5. And again, 3.5 is right in the middle of 3 and 4, so the formula works. All right, so for the next two, we're actually going to kind of go backwards. I'm going to give you an end point of a segment, and I'm going to give you the midpoint. We're going to see if we can come up with the other point on what would be on the other end of a segment. And I'm going to kind of use a picture to draw this out. It says M is the midpoint of segment AB. So just to visualize this, we learned what a segment was. If I have segment AB, that means A and B are my end points. And it says M is the midpoint, so M is right smack in the middle. Okay. The coordinates of A are negative 2, 3. I'm going to label that. Negative 2, 3. And the coordinates of M, which is the middle, is 1, 0. Find the coordinates of B. So here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to take these 2 points I'm given and plug it into the midpoint formula, because that's just going to give me this point in red. I don't want that point, I want B. Okay? We're actually given the midpoint here. Here's how I think of this, and I think this is the easiest way. If I want M to be my middle, let's use purple. And I know one end is at negative 2, and then the middle is at 1. Let's think about that jump on a number line. If I'm going from negative 2 to 1, that's going up 3 units. So if I'm thinking about what should be on the other end of that, and I'm thinking about distance, the distance from A to M should be the same as the distance from M to B. So I would have to go up another 3 units, and 1 plus 3 is 4. So think about that for a second. One end, my x value is at negative 2. And if I want 1 to be in the middle, then 4 would have to be on the other end. That way they're both 3 apart. So let's do the y values now. Okay, this y value is at 3, but this one's at 0. So this one's actually going down 3. So if you think about 3 on a number line, and then 0's in the middle, the other end would have to be negative 3. And there's your answer right there. Another way to do this, you could use the formula. Keep in mind this formula is for the midpoint equals, or M equals. So if you were doing this, here's what you would do. Delta Math might do it this way too. You would take your x values first. You'd set up 2 equations, take your x values. I know one of my x values from my given point is negative 2. I do not know the x value for B, so I would put x and divide it by 2. Again, I stole that from the midpoint formula, where you do x1 plus x2 divided by 2. Okay. Equals the x of the midpoint. So we actually were given the midpoint, and it was 1. So let's see if we get the same answer. Let's see if we get an x value of 4. What I would do to cancel out that 2 on the bottom is just multiply both sides by 2. I have negative 2 plus x equals 2. And then you just solve for x. And we do get 4, so our x value is 4. Then you could do the same thing with the y's. We know one of our y's is 3. We do not know the other y. And you use the midpoint formula. y1 plus y2 divided by 2 should give you the midpoint. And we know the midpoint y value right here is 0. Same thing. If you multiply 0 by 2, you just get 0. So 3 plus y equals 0. Minus 3, y equals -3. So I got 4, -3 as my point. So there's 2 ways to do it. I think just figuring out what you're adding or subtracting is easiest because you could almost do it in your head. But you could also use the formula. Just keep in mind, you know one of the x and y values, but you don't know the other x and y value. You only know the midpoint. So let's try this one. B is the midpoint of segment AC. So here's segment AC. A and C are my midpoints. Sorry, endpoints. B is my midpoint. A is at -10, 4. And then the middle is at -2, 4. We do not know where C is at. So let's do the x value first. I know the difference between these two x values is 8. If you look, the jump is going up 8. So those x values are 8 apart from A to B. So that means these should also be 8 apart. And if I take -2 plus 8, I get 6. So I know C's x value has to be at 6. And then let's use blue now. Oh, this is interesting. I'm going from 4 to 4. That means it's not changing. So that means this one shouldn't change either. If you think about how that would look on a graph, this would be like a vertical line. They all have a y value of 4. So there's your other endpoint. Okay. So again, your backside of your notes is probably blank. I want you to just pause, just write these down, try them, make sure you got it, but I'll run through one more time. If you've tried it on your own and you've kind of thought about it, here's how you would do them. So you have A, B. The midpoint is M, which is at 6, -1. And you know A is 8, 4. It's asking for B. Okay. This jump is -2. Those are 2 apart, and we're going in the negative direction. So if this is in the middle, then these should also be 2 apart. Same distance on both sides. So 6 minus 2 is 4. And then you do the same thing for the y values. I'm going from 4 to -1. That's going down 5, so I want to go down another 5. It's like you're counting. -1 minus 5 is -6. Okay, and then let's do this one. Again, you have A. A is at 1, -8. You have M. You do not have B. Okay. From 1 to -2, that's going down 3. I'm going to use a color. So I'm going to go down 3 again. That puts me at -5. Okay, and then you do the y's. -8 to -5, that's going up 3. So I want to go up 3 again. And that is -2. So there's your answer there. All right, I'm actually going to separate these videos so they're not quite as long, but we're going to do midpoint next. So there's going to be 2 parts to this, or sorry, we're going to do distance next. There's going to be 2 parts to this video. Next video should be pretty short.